Today we're going to be speaking about Nigeria's health policy. Is there a cogent health policy anywhere? What has become of the initiatives in the health sector? How are we well positioned? What have we done, for example, with our primary health care center? And of course, for quite a while now, we've been hearing about the fact that our health budget, as a proportion of our national budget and our GDP, is particularly nothing to write home about. What about the initiative of the NHIS, National Health Insurance Scheme? In a country like Ghana, they actually take it quite serious, such that even if you eat in a restaurant and you're not even from Ghana, they take a certain 2.5% that goes into their National Health Insurance Scheme. The pool of funds keeps rising. What is the future of our health policy in Nigeria, especially now that we're having a scenario where a lot of the professionals in the health sector are keying into the Japa syndrome and are leaving the country in droves? Indeed, a good proportion of Nigerians in diaspora work in the health sector as well as in the social services sector. Anyway, joining us today is someone who's a professional in the industry from an NGO perspective and has an international understanding of what the issues are. Mr. Felix Abrahams Obi, welcome.
Thank you.
So you heard the kind of premise I tried to lay, in the background. So what's your opinion about this? What's going on with our health? Do we have a health policy in the first place? And if we do, what's the state of play right now?
Yeah, thanks, Tokwe. It's really my pleasure. It's actually my first time here. So
yeah, first time.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I hope to come back again so that we can discuss more. So I'll need to maybe take us back down memory lane. So the first health policy we had was during the Babangida era. So remember, everybody talks about the father of Nigerian primary healthcare system, Professor Olikoye Ransom Kuti. So around 87, 88, developed the first national health policy. So you can imagine Nigeria got independence in 1960, and then we ran our health system, but there was really no policy that it was anchored on, specifically for health. Of course, we had the national development plans that spoke to different sectors. So it was him who envisioned that idea of, so we moved from basic healthcare services and then to primary healthcare. So Nigeria's system, maybe in the 70s, early 80s, our primary healthcare system was quite strong. You remember we used to go for immunization as kids, and then we had the sanitary inspectors, So, and those were like primary healthcare category of workers. So they made sure that our environments are clean. We cleaned up, and they used to come and inspect, if you remember. So that 1980, we had that, and the focus was on primary healthcare. And if you recall, because Nigeria was, during the military, we are more like a centralized government. So authority comes from top, and then it goes down to the states. And of course, we had the military governors in the state who respond to the command from HQ and all. So it was a lot easier to manage. So even though we were implementing primary healthcare at the local government level and all, and the responsibilities were clear. Primary healthcare was, to a large extent, the responsibility of the local government, if you recall. But now we move to democracy. I know
so this Professor Olikoye's intervention was 1980.
Around 1988. So that policy stayed on till 1999. So we moved to civilian democracy and all. So, and something happened in 2000. I don't know if you recall, WHO released the ranking of health systems. So Nigeria ranked very low. I think Nigeria was, out of about 203 or so that we are ranked, Nigeria was like 199. Like from the bottom, we were about number 4. And the only countries who were better than, like Liberia, who were in war, Sierra Leone, and so like very poor countries who were conflict zones. So when Obasanjo came in, of course, that was, if you recall, health was one of the areas he prioritized. And then another good thing that happened to us then was Professor Lambo, who was, so he was a health economist at WHO regional office, Africa regional office, and he was a health economist for 10 years. So about that time he was transitioning. So some donor agencies were interested in helping Nigeria reform its health system because we were more like, imagine that poor ranking. So he was invited by DFI, the UK government, to develop a concept note for them on how Nigeria can reform the health sector by Nigerians, not external people.
I see.
So it was called the Change Agents Program. Now, I know a lot of people don't know about it, but so Lambo developed that concept, and they read it, and they were like, wow, this was very perfect. So they invited him back, said, guy, you know better. If you could develop this concept, and it was very clear, I think you should be the one to implement this program. So it was supposed to be for 2 years, 2002. So he recruited, so the idea was pick Nigerians who can become change agents. People within the health sector, people, a few outside the health sector, who can become, they understand health system, understand health reform, and then they can become the change agents who advocate for change within the health sector. So Olori Egbe, the current Senate committee chair of the Senate Committee on Health. So he was one of them. Yeah, Dr. Ben. There were a few people, Dr. Lekki. There were a couple of people they picked across Nigeria. The first set was about, they were about 30. So they taught them what they understand what is health policy, reforms. And another interesting thing they helped them do was they took them for study tours. Some went to South Africa to see how is their health system working. I think some went to, so they divided them into, some went to maybe Egypt, but they went to specific countries to like engage with them. And then one key thing they found out was that the health policy we had was already, I don't want to use the word estimate, but it's already old and stale, not responding to the realities. Imagine 1988, and this is 2002. So it was already over 10 years and all. So they decided to, okay, let's review our health policy, that we need to have a new health policy, revise it to respond to the current needs. And then another important thing from their review of the Nigerian health system was that we don't have, that the 1999 Constitution, I don't want to say that it is silent about health reform.
I think it is.
Yeah, so because
maybe
health
it doesn't drill down, but it just talks about social services.
Yeah, and all of that. So they realized that health is not really justiciable if you want to use the 1999 Constitution. So they recognize that legal lacuna. So, okay, why don't we have a law that will back up health reforms? And you know about if a government changes, but the reform, and there is a law backing it, it makes it a lot easier that the reform or the policy will remain. So they now drafted a health law, a health bill, national health bill. Then in 2002, of course, it went through, you know, Nigeria. So it took a long time. But while that was happening, so Lambo, so they trained them on issues around health reform for so by 2004, so they had finished the program, and they now felt, no, we need to do something, that we need to continue this work. So they formed a membership organization called Health Sector Reform Coalition. Health Sector Reform Coalition, or HEFON. It was like more Health Reform Foundation of Nigeria. The Health Reform Foundation of Nigeria, HEFON. So that was, so Olori Egbe was like the first CEO of that. So they continued to work. So by then, by 2004, Lambo was now appointed as Minister of Health by Obasanjo to now drive those reforms. So that was how, if you notice, during Lambo's time, he was very policy driven. So by 2014,
Professor, you said Lambo,
sorry, by 2004 rather, we had the revised national health policy. And then some of the reforms, they tried to reform the tertiary healthcare, so there were a lot of investments, but nothing much was done for primary healthcare. Because I'm laying this foundation.
Very important. I like the historical perspective, and that's why I'm giving you more time on that, you know, because it's very important. Oftentimes, we don't know where we are because we don't know where we're coming from.
Absolutely.
So this is very important. You have laid it. So where do we stand as around now?
Okay, great. So
you've taken it to about 2004, 2005.
So he did. You know, like he had a health sector reform program from 2004 to like 2007 when he was the minister, and then by the time he left, some of the reforms continue. But one of the key reforms that he initiated was the National Health Insurance Scheme.
Okay. Oh,
so it was one of those. So by 2005, they rolled out the health insurance. Now, but the law was passed like 1999. So, but operationalization fully commenced to 2005. Now, so Labour did not buy into
the idea,
because it was supposed to be social health insurance, and where it is contributory social health insurance. But I think Obasanjo somehow felt, look, whatever you can do, just let's go. So because the states, because we are in a federation, so the states did not fully buy in, because the idea was if you contribute, bring to the federal. I think, so somehow it was one of two states, Cross River and Bauchi, that we a bit amenable to it, but they didn't quite pull through. So the implementation focused mainly on federal civil servants. So that is, so most times when people say, but we have a health insurance scheme and it's not covering everybody, they need to understand that one, health insurance was not compulsory.
Yes.
So, and the scheme was run based on funding from the federal government.
All right.
To cover its own employees, and their dependents. So that's why, so when they say, oh, coverage is about 5% or less, but you need to put that in perspective. Yeah, so
is that a slowdown, so to speak, in the expansion of this NHIS initiative to private sector and other, so that even informal sector?
No, so that first time, the government was more committed to the federal civil servants because they were employees of government.
Yes.
But there was also private health insurance. We had HMOs. So that 2005, I think about 11 or so HMOs were brought in to administer the insurance, but they also ran their own private insurance.
Okay.
Yeah, it was side by side with the federal. And then NHIA also initiated some community health insurance schemes where they try to support insurance schemes at the community level. But the thing is that community health insurance, even though it's a noble idea, like they did in Kwara, in Kwara was one of the places where we had some good results. But the thing about community health insurance is sustainability.
Right. How does community health insurance work? So 1 second before we go for a break.
So community health insurance is where a small community, they contribute.
Okay.
Maybe a premium, maybe it could be about 1,000 or 500, and then so members that are within that community will access service at specific health centers or within their domain. But our people, culturally, we don't prepay for health.
You don't even want to entertain the idea. Someone comes to you, you say, God forbid, I will not get sick. Anyhow, just hold on to your thoughts there. We'll take a quick break.
Okay.
I'll pay some bills and then we'll be right back.
No problems, yeah.
Now, as part of efforts to support Africa's goal of strengthening...
Now, looking at the activity chart, as you can see right here, a total volume of 130...
Created a Boko Haram crisis that at that time was restricted to Yobe.
How secured are they? You can see security men with blood.
This is the road leading up to the...
Already, if you look at English squad, you are looking at EPL, you are looking at their names. You are not looking at...
Welcome back to the program, and we're discussing with Mr. Felix Abrahams Obi on Nigeria's health policy, the evolution over time, historical perspective, and other issues. So welcome, man.
Yeah.
So let's say that we are up to, okay, so where are we presently?
Okay, so,
and then we'll now look at some other issues.
So for now, if you don't mind, I will go back to say 2014.
Okay, fair enough, very quickly.
So that National Health Bill that I said, they developed drafted around 2002, 2003, or 4. So it went to the National Assembly as a executive bill. But it took 10 years for it to be passed into law. You remember during Iyabo Basanjo, some of those. So the women, 2011, they had to go to the National Assembly to protest that they could go naked. And then the Senate passed it. But unfortunately, Goodluck couldn't sign it into law that 2011. There were some objections that were raised. So, but somehow during Okowa's time, the Senate was able to pass, and then it was sent. So Goodluck signed, I think October 2014. Yeah. So now that law is the first time we are having a National Health Act that supports policy reforms. But there are two key provisions in that law. So that law says that every Nigerian, I'm saying this because of the primary health care focus. So that law has a provision that says every Nigerian should be entitled to a basic minimum package of health care.
Well, I'm sure that's not happening now.
So
what does that mean, really?
So because, I told you earlier, because the Constitution did not specify that, so it was one of the things. But the good thing was that they also emphasized that, look, for you to fund those basic healthcare services, there has to be funding. So they also established a law within a provision that says it should be funded through a basic healthcare provision fund. That will be at least 1% grant from the consolidated revenue of the federal government. Something similar to UBEC. So now that was 2014. So now, policy implementation is not a linear thing. So, but since 2018, 2019, we started getting a release of that fund. So the implementation has actually started. So at some point in 2019, there has to be a moratorium because there were issues, but somehow by 2021, implementation has started. So now that funding goes to all the states.
What do they do? Do they just send to the state government to do whatever they want with it, or does it go straight to the health ministry in those states?
Great. So that law, out of let's say 100% of the funds, 50% goes to National Health Insurance Authority. Before it was National Health Insurance Scheme. So since last year there was a new law which we'll come back to. So they are supposed to use that money to pay for these services that will be gotten by Nigerians at the primary health care level.
So are we saying that any Nigerian can walk into any hospital?
So of course that's the law, but that when you're also implementing
people
a policy,
are not aware of this,
not all Nigerians.
Nigerians are not aware of this because
but there's a caveat because that money we get about, because it's 1% of the federal consolidated revenue, so it goes up and down. Because of our revenue profile.
Pulling now.
It's pulling.
We're pulling it right now.
Absolutely. So what happens is that the National Primary Health Care Agency gets 45% of that fund. And now the good thing is that it targets the beneficiaries of MPACDS fund at the primary health care centers. And you recall during the last, there was this period where we said we want to have at least one functional primary health care center in a ward. So this fund goes to those primary health care centers to help them at least buy the essential drugs, maybe if they need to fix some things, but at least to get them ready to deliver services. Why that was important, so it's within health finance, we call it direct facility financing, to give them some autonomy. Because most primary health care centers, though owned by either local government or communities, they don't get operational funds. So you can imagine when you were in the bank, you don't have operational funds to run the bank. So PACs don't get, so they don't really have the right equipment, medicine, so people they don't really get what they should get.
What's the provision of the policy to ensure that those primary healthcare centers get directly? Because I remember about some months back, I was in Ondo State, in Akure, where I'm from, and there's a certain area which is not supposed to be very highbrow. I had to attend a wedding, and so those kind of places where you have to park your car somewhere and use Okada to get there. And I passed this primary healthcare center. I was dead. Nothing was going on there. So what's the provision that they actually get that money to at least show some activity? You know, we say that we go to, unfortunately, we've also had this instance up to the state hospital here where the first lady said even ordinary Panadol is not there, you know, and there's a lot of billions that get disbursed every year.
Yeah, so I'll speak for the primary healthcare under this basic healthcare provision fund. We just abbreviate it to BHCPF. So if I use basic healthcare provision fund. So I know it's a new, it's kind of a reform that is, it has not maybe penetrated so deeply but for people to know. But in places where you have those ward PHCs that receive this fund, people can attest that some transformation is happening.
Oh, that would be great.
And it's just that we have different categories of primary healthcare centers. So you can have a health center, maybe the one you saw, but for these ward PHCs, because there was a lot of some criteria that were used to kind of like assess them and say, okay, they meet this standard, or even if they didn't meet. So the idea is an interesting reform. So for instance, each primary healthcare center develops a business plan. So they have a business plan. So this funding that comes to them is to implement what is in their business plan. Of course, it's a bit of strategic planning. It may take some time to become institutionalized, but so they get funds every quarter, maybe about 300,000 to use to get their facilities ready. So and then NHIS now pays for people who access those services. So there's a package of services, benefit package.
But those people must have registered.
They register. So for now, so there's a ministerial oversight committee at the national level, and also you have at the state that had to like decide. Of course, for policy, you want to also ensure equity. That who are the people that need? So not every night. Some Nigerians might be able to pay, but for that level, it's okay. Look, people who are poor and vulnerable should be the first set of beneficiaries until as we move forward.
Wow. So do you think this is going to be able to reverse the exodus of our professionals in the health sector, if at all? Because again, now let me quickly address that because you know, when our people want to leave the country, a lot of people who are leaving the country, they actually run away from their problems. People believe that it's better to be in London, even if I'm suffering. People will not know, you know. And then number one, you know, I mean, then I'm not that reachable by all these family people that are calling me for money. Number two, and of course, they then look at, even if I was earning £1,000, that is 900 and something thousand naira. It's a lot of money. But they don't understand that if you are earning £1,000, you are really, really suffering in the UK.
I mean,
you know, if you were earning 2,000, you are really, really suffering. The kind of suffering that may be worse than if you were in Nigeria. You know what? So there's the PPP argument, the purchasing power parity, that what 900,000 naira would do for you here. If you were earning 900,000, even after tax, maybe you get 700,000 or 750. You're a king.
Big boy.
You're a big boy. You will need to earn about £7,000. Okay, net. Maybe if you get £5,000, which is like, we're talking about 5 million equivalent. So what is 900,000 here? You need maybe 5-6 million equivalent in the UK to begin to live on. You won't even have a car. You don't need a car. You'll have to join the train. Here, with that kind of money, you drive a good car. You know, 3 months salary, you can buy a nice Tokumbo car.
Absolutely.
You know, and so, but are we ever going to be able to reverse that trend? And again, like I said earlier, most of our people who travel abroad are in the healthcare jobs. Of course, nurses are very popular. Almost a lot of our doctors have run away. Healthcare professional, even things like lab technology now, especially with this COVID thing and all, they became a center of focus and so on. So are we ever going to be able to reverse this trend?
So at least some of us are still in Nigeria who train at health. I trained first as a physiotherapist. I still do some bit of practice on the side, but before public health and policy. So the fact is that there are still a large number of people who believe in this country and who understand. Some of us have also lived there or went to school there. So we understand the reality. So sometimes when people are painting, the only thing, and I need to be frank, is that so healthcare keep advancing. So there are some incentives that people who practice abroad are exposed to that we are not exposed to here.
Exactly.
Like in terms of high-tech equipment, professional development opportunities, and maybe the work environment.
Exactly.
And I need to be honest. So some of our hospitals have not been upgraded to be at par with what is happening globally.
And I'm not sure we know how to maintain anything. I'm sorry.
I don't want to say we don't know how to, because they said in the 60s and 70s, I think either the royal family in Saudi Arabia come to UCH.
Yes, in Ibadan.
Yeah, so it wasn't as if, so I think at some point, maybe from the 80s, things went downhill. So I think somehow, if we as a country, the other time we were discussing about Rwanda. So our people go to Rwanda, it's okay, how are they, their health insurance, health insurance is almost like coverage is up to 80%.
Wow.
In Rwanda. Of course, their population, yes, we might say, okay, their population is small, but as a country, so if a state in Nigeria, which might be equivalent in terms of population to Rwanda, can cover those who live in that state up to 50%, it would be great. But the good thing is that we are gradually making those reforms. For instance, in 2015, there was a decentralization of health insurance.
Okay.
Before it was only NHIS, so the coverage was mainly federal civil servants.
Yes.
Now, the National Council on Health here in Abuja, 2015, reached a resolution to say states can go ahead to run health insurance. So states, great.
That's a good one.
So the coverage.
I think a few states have taken on.
No, a couple of states, almost all the states, maybe except I think it's either Akwa Ibom or Rivers that has not signed, but every other state has set up their health insurance scheme and covering people. So, and that is where the coverage should happen. Because nobody belongs to the federal government except the civil servants. But every other person, even though we are in FCT, we are under FCT administration. So they are the ones to take care of us. So the same for other states. So really, a couple of states have the coverage is gradually, I think for now, I'm not sure of the exact figures, but we probably have up to 10% of Nigerians covered under at least one type of health insurance scheme or the other, which was not possible 10 years ago.
I think this is as much as we're going to be able to take today, but I just want to say, as a parting shot, I think also the marketing of government initiatives is a problem. We need to do a lot more to let people know. The government is really working. Of course, government is a continuum. Unfortunately, where we are right now today is the average Nigerian is getting more and more cynical about government, believing nothing good can ever come out. Of course, people have suffered, inflation and all of these things that are coming up, but I think you've mentioned some very important steps that has happened in that sector to date, which I believe that we'll be able to build on. And Nigerians should also be made to be aware of those opportunities and of course, even some of these things we've spoken about are opportunities for jobs.
Yeah.
Those state health insurance schemes and the initiative to push more resources to primary health centers. There are thousands of them around the country. Those are job opportunities. What I think may be missing is that patriotism to let people know that sometimes sitting here in Nigeria earning 80,000 naira, you're better off than someone earning 2,500 pounds in the UK.
Even
or someone earning $3,000.
The social support you get.
Social capital.
You can't quantify the fact that you have family, the kind of friends.
People you can run to, your friends that you grew up, and even things you can do in your society that if you are out there, they don't even believe that you exist. Thank you very much for coming, Mr. Felix Abraham Sobi. And it's been great talking to you today, dear viewers. Thanks for staying in touch and staying tuned in. See you next week.